Hi, Pat.
Morning, Joanne. How are you? I guess good afternoon.
I'm well. Do you have snow?
No, just where they making it. It's cold enough.
Yeah. Good.
You've got a full docket today.
Yes, we do. Yeah. Good afternoon, Mark. I see you joined.
Now I'm not. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. That's a
Amazing. I see
yes.
Pat. He looks good,
Mind you.
as do you, obviously. But
Should
now
be
I'm
able to be heard. Now we should.
trying to find out where my.
Joanne and Pat, can you hear us now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Awesome.
If you were dedicated board members like me, you would be here in person.
Well.
We were retired like you, we'd be there in person.
Okay, so who are we waiting on?
Dale and Dean
Yes.
And Jeff.
and Jeff.
There's Jeff. This takes us an extra minute since we're in half the waiting room.
Yeah, there's Jeff. So you have a quorum, but I would suggest another minute or two.
Okay.
new format here, Jennifer,
Total miles driven.
Okay.
If they give you like. If it's on the night.
I see Dale joined us.
Good morning. I'm here.
Hi, Dale.
Hi, how's everybody down there?
And I see, looks like Dean's joining us right now.
This is Jeff. Can you hear me? I can hear you guys.
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you, Jeff.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, Dean.
Hey.
Okay, Joanne, all the finance committee members are present and it is the appointed time.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Finance Committee meeting number 10-23 of the Idaho Water Resource Board. It's a Wednesday, November 1st, 2023, 1 p.m. Mountain Time and 12:01 Pacific, at least for the rest of this week. The next item on the agenda is, the first item on the agenda is attendance and introductions.
Madam Chair, you have all finance committee members present. In addition to that, you have Pat McMahon and Brian Olmstead also as board members that are not on the finance committee. And then Jennifer will be taking note of others that have joined the meeting either via Zoom or in person.
Okay. And is the general public allowed to join via Zoom?
What we have done is those who have business can join via Zoom. The general public is given the live stream link via YouTube.
Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda is the Aging Infrastructure Grant Recommendations, round number 3.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm going to turn this over to Neely Miller to walk through this agenda item.
All right, thank you, Neely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, committee members and members of the board. As Mr. Patton indicated, today I'll be discussing round 3 of the Aging Infrastructure Grant Scoring and Ranking. As you will recall, the application period for the board's 3rd round of Aging Infrastructure closed on August 4th, 2023. The board received 23 grant applications requesting a little over $11 million in funding. And then attached to this memo is a summary of staff scoring and ranking of applications. Again, that's ranked and scored according to the criteria that you adopted earlier in the year. So here on the screen, you should see the breakdown for the scoring for the aging infrastructure applications for round 3. They're ranked from the highest scoring to the lowest scoring. And then off there to the right, you should see a district breakdown by 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the percentage of the funds requested from each district. I would highlight here that the total funds requested is less than the budgeted amount that you had budgeted. You had budgeted up to $12.5 million for round 3. Applications came in again a little over 11 million. I just would like to highlight a few projects on this list. You can see that here in the center is Elmore County. It's white. It says does not meet criteria. It's not infrastructure. And this is in discussing this with staff and some of the finance committee members, including Madam Chair, that it was a seepage study, and that I think you guys didn't, or at least there was concern about setting a precedent. This aging infrastructure is meant for infrastructure and not studies. So it was determined that this one, at least from a staff perspective and some of the committee members, that it is not meet the criteria and it's not infrastructure. Additionally, there's another one here at the bottom. It did score the lowest, but it was submitted by an individual, and it was for benefiting that individual on that property with one beneficiary. So basically, because it's an individual, they're not eligible to apply for the aging infrastructure grant. staff determined this one does not meet the eligibility requirements either. The only other one I guess I would like to mention here or point out is the Milner Dam. You can see right here, there's the Milner Dam Spillway Bridge Deck Rehab requesting about $500,000. Then there's another piece of the Milner Dam Service Spillway Plunge Pool Rehab, which is requesting about 1.5 million. And then down here, a little farther towards the bottom, is another Milner Dam one. So it was broke into 3 pieces. And it's again, it's the spillway concrete surface rehab for a little over 12,000. I believe when you add those up, they're a little over the $2 million grant limit. So you may want to consider how you want to address that as well. And with that, I would stand for any questions or discussion on this ranking and any questions about the projects.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, this is Jeff. A series of questions, Neely. I want to start with this Elmore County one. You've still got numbers on that line item. Do those numbers contribute to the 11,177,689 at the bottom of the screen?
This does not. It subtracts out. It's the difference of
Okay, so
$5,000.
that red number is the accurate. That's the number without that. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, then I guess to follow up, I think we probably need to cap the Milner Dam grant applications at 2 million. I think that's the rule we've got in place. Correct me if I'm not wrong, but isn't the Falls Irrigation ask up there on the third line, isn't that to round them up to 2 million from a previous grant round, or is that something different, Neely?
Falls Irrigation has applied and for this project, for series of projects and been funded. This portion of the project is a new project, so it's not the same project. It's a new phase of the project.
Okay.
So it's a little different than all being part of a spillway at the Milner Dam.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. I think we've got a policy that we cap 2 million per project and probably ought to adhere to that.
Is there any other comments regarding the $2 million cap? This would shave off 88,623 from their request. Okay, I also agree with that. I think that we should par them back for the same asset, same project, cap it at 2 million, even though we're not distributing all of the 12.5. I think it's important that we try to spread that money out across as far as we can go.
But Madam Chair, this is Dean. I have the same feeling you and Jeff do on this. I think we need to stick at that $2 million cap.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Okay, Dale?
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. We gotta stick to our rules, and that's the easiest way to do it.
Okay. Mark, you're the last member of the Finance Committee. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, I'm fine with that rule. Yeah.
Okay, so do any of the other board members have any comments about the aging infrastructure applications for round 3 in general, or the $2 million cap?
Madam Chair, Neely, this is Brian. I think the 2 million is important to stay at. If we even go a little bit over it, then we've kind of opened a door.
Okay, so I think that the next step would be to make a recommendation to the full board regarding the aging infrastructure. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, this is Dale. I'll go ahead and move that we approve the applications for round 3 for a total of $11,172,244.
Actually, it'd be a little less. It would be 88,623 less if we knock down Milner.
Well, I thought they took that out. They didn't take that out yet. Okay. Well, minus 88,000 something.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is Dean. I'll second it.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, this is Jeff. I'm going to abstain. Two of these applicants are affiliated with me, or I'm affiliated with them. I don't know which, but I'm going to abstain from voting.
Okay. So all in favor, say aye.
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 All abstaining?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so there's been a recommendation to move this forward to the full board meeting in November with the adjustment to Milner Dam's 3 projects, capping at 2 million.
That sounds great. I'll prepare that memo and materials for and a resolution for you to consider at your November board meeting. I'd also just highlight that so this is round 3. You will award these presumably at the November meeting. The round 4 applications are due December 1st. We sent out a press release last week as a reminder to folks. That'll be round 4, and tentatively that'll be awarded probably in January or February. And then in discussing with the finance committee, staff is proposing, and I guess another round 5 and 6 next year, well, presumably with a due date of around 1st of August and again around December 1st of next year. So that would be for another 2 rounds, presuming the board has the funding and wants to proceed forward. I think they do have the funding, sorry.
Well, excellent. So everybody online listening to that, get your pencil sharp.
And in addition to that, the regional request to be added to the regional water sustainability priority list are also due on December 1st. We'll talk about that agenda item in a minute, but I just wanted to make sure that doesn't get missed. There's another deadline to submit that request, and then the board would update that list in the new year, that regional water sustainability priority list.
Okay. Neely, before we leave this project, this item, the percent of the total, that must be based on what, how come it's 89.4%, not 100%?
It's 89 of the 12.5. So you're only spending 89% of your budget of 12.5. If that makes sense. It's the 11,177, but I need to adjust that to account for the dropping of Elmore and the adjustment on Milner.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does, but so we're trying to show that we don't actually have a requirement that money has to be spent in every district. Is that correct?
That's correct. The criteria does not say that money has to be spent in every district. It does say that if the board will try not to spend any more than 50% of the budget in any one district, unless they're competing demands and you choose to waive that limit. Here you can see that at least of the total budget, you're only spending 46 in District 3.
Okay. All right. I guess we're ready to move on then.
Okay, next item, there are several items dealing with the loan program, and Justin Ferguson will take those.
Welcome, Justin.
There we go. Afternoon. So I've got 1 new loan and 4 extensions this afternoon. The first one, we can just get started. Marsh Center Irrigation Company, southeast of Pocatello in Aramo, Idaho. They're looking to reline their canals. They were built back in 1869. They've needed some work near Hawkins Reservoir. They've secured grant funding from NRCS and through the Portneuf Soil and Water Conservation District for more than the project cost, but they need our loan as a bridge loan to get the work done before costs can be reimbursed. So the estimated project total came in at 1,023,866, give or take. Of that, they've been awarded 1.125 million. So they have more funding than they need to get the project done. They are requesting 700,000 from the board to get things started at a 2-year term and an 8.5% interest rate. To secure the loan, they've offered Hawkins Reservoir, water rights, infrastructure, and then they've also provided 2 executed copies of both the Soil and Water Districts grant and the NRCS contract. So we have both of those in hand. Past that, I have Mr. Wade Egan on the line. If you have any questions or if you'd like to make a statement, but before that, I can stand for any questions.
Jeff, do you have a question?
Madam Chairman, I do. So it is this irrigation company's intention to, after 1 year, repay half the loan, or $380,000. It's not going to be a loan for 2 years and then be repaid at the end of 2 years. There's going to be they have the ability to come up with $380,000 a year from now.
So for that one, I may have to defer to Mr. Egan, only because with the NRCS contracts, they've structured it in segments to where they can do a chunk and get reimbursed and then do another chunk and get reimbursed. And so I'm not sure if 50% will be done before that 1 year mark.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I think we need to clarify that and see if there's going to be any payments before the end of 2 years. The other thing that we probably ought to have clarified is if something goes awry and they do not get the grant money, do they have the ability to assess and repay this over an extended period of time, 15, 20 years, something like that?
Okay, Mr. Egan, would you like to comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Board, for taking this time to meet with us. Yeah, so to answer the question, our plan is, at this point, we've got all the engineering is pretty much done. It should be done by Friday, and we're hoping to get started on this project before Christmas and have it done by the 1st of May, 1st of June of 2024. If we run into some weather or other kind of problems, we could stretch it out. That's why we wanted to have this as a 2-year payback. But we've structured this project so we do it in segments with NRCS and with Portland Soil, that we can make these as we start at the dam and work our way down the structure of those canals, that we can get paid in segments. We don't have to complete the whole $1 million project to get payment from them. So we'll have that as we go along. As far as the ability to assess, yes, we have assessment authority for our shareholders.
I'm not sure that you answered the question, though. Will you be able to pay the $380,000 by the end of October of 2024?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So based on the way it's structured, we hope to repay the whole thing by June of 2024.
Okay. That's what I thought you were saying. I just wanted to clarify that. And if something goes awry,
Yeah.
you have the ability to assess your members.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that
Madam
satisfy
Chairman?
your question, Jeff?
Madam Chairman, this is Mark.
Yes, Mark.
Mr. Egan, can you work on this project during the irrigation season, or does it have to be completed before the start of irrigation season next year?
Great question. We can work on it during the irrigation system. It makes it a little more difficult for some of the shareholders, but if we start at the dam, and the way we've got this thing structured, we can start, and if we get into a problem, we can continue to irrigate. So throughout the rain for the summer, but we'd like to have it done by irrigation season in May.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, this is Jeff. I think that satisfies my question. I want them to know that if they don't get the grant money, they still got to pay the 700 back, and we probably they ought to have a backup plan, at least in the back of their mind, that they can propose to us a year from now if something's gone upside down.
Yes. Okay. So I think are there any other questions regarding this loan application?
Madam Chair, this is Dale. Is this a gravity system that's being put in, or are there pumps associated with the system?
That's another great question, if I can answer that one. So this is going to be a gravity pressurized system, and it will eliminate a lot of pumping costs.
Okay.
And yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. Are you looking for a motion that we recommend this to the full board to be approved?
I am.
That is your motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Barring further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carried.
All right. And I had put Mr. Egan's presentation in the materials in case you want to go back through before the next meeting in November.
Thank you, Justin.
So next I have the 4 contract extensions, and there'll be a memo and explanation for each one. And it looks like we have a representative from each extension on the line in case we have questions. I'll go through each memo, and then at the end, there's a single resolution to approve all 4 extensions. And I'll get started with Mr. Alan Hanstein and the Northside Canal Company. So Mr. Hanstein was able to provide a statement they had an opportunity to apply for federal funding, and the award period kind of puts them outside of the time to act on this contract. And while applying for the funds is not out of their control, it does present a pretty great opportunity to defer costs to their shareholders.
Is he on the line?
I believe so.
Yes, I'm here. This is Alan.
Would you like to comment about that?
Yeah, so what we've done, we've visited with the Bureau of Reclamation and what they call their Water Energy and Efficiency Grant Program. That application period should be opening any day now. And our intention is to apply for one of those grants to help fund this project. And then, of course, we wouldn't know on the award of that grant money until probably next spring, summer of 24. And then we're hoping to be able to get the project under construction next fall, if possible, if we can get the environmental clearances done with the Bureau of Reclamation during the same time period as well. So that's where we're at. We're hoping to extend this loan out and see if we're successful on getting the federal dollars to help fund this lining project on the main canal up at Milner.
Okay. Board members or finance committee members, are there any questions for the applicant or any questions about the project? I see this is a $5 million project at 4.38%.
Yes.
And a 20-year repayment term.
That is correct.
So we would be tying up the $5 million for another, how long will we be tying the $5 million up?
I believe with the recent extension, it would still be the 20-year repayment term, because if we were to modify the term or the interest rate, we would have to start up a new loan application. So they would still be tied to that 20-year term.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. I think if the alternative would probably be is Northside would take the money, because they could probably put the money in the bank and net out on the interest until they figure out what they're doing. I think this is a good idea. If they can reduce the amount of money they need to borrow, that will free up additional dollars that we can then lend to somebody else.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
This is
Okay.
Alan, and I would just comment that we are at 90% drawings on the project. And the latest engineer's estimate also dropped the cost of the project down. And if we were to receive the Bureau's money, right now our estimate's around the $5 million mark instead of the $7 million we'd originally planned on. So if the Bureau is to come in with the $2.5 million, then that knocks it down to a $2.5 million job. And then we also had the Water Resource Board grant for this project for 30% of the cost. I believe that would probably be what we've been awarded, maybe higher than what the actual project ends up being. So some of that grant money would probably be returned. And then the net amount that we would have to borrow from the board would also be reduced at the end of the day if we can secure these federal dollars.
Well, it sounds like a win-win. We'll get a final project that will help the irrigators in that area, and we'll get the money back to loan out for another project.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, this is Jeff. I move to recommend to the full board that we approve this extension.
Do we want to do these individually, or do we want to do them as a group?
Yeah, I think let's do them individually and make sure that they all get the same look.
Okay. So there's been a motion. Is there a second?
This is Dean Stevenson. I'll second it.
Thank you, Dean. All in favor of moving this forward to the full board in November, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next one.
Next one, we have Northside Pumping Company, and Mr. Parley Hinton is on the line. They've provided a statement. I can jet to it really quick, but they're waiting on some NEPA approvals, and so not quite the same boat. They're tied up. They would like to start work, but they can't until they get the final proceed to work, and so they're requesting an extension until they can get that from Reclamation.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I believe Mr. Hinton's on the line in case you have questions or if he would like to make a statement.
Would you like to make a statement?
Yes, Madam Chair. As of right now, they're in the final stages of drawing up the notice to proceed. They have got everything and finishing the documents up with the SHPO office as of today. So we're hoping to be able to get rolling next week. So we're finally getting past that hurdle and ready to get rolling. But I just didn't want to miss the deadlines.
Appreciate that. Finance Committee, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Hinton? Is there other board members? Do you have any questions or concerns? Okay, is there a motion to move this one forward to the full board?
Madam Chairman,
Madam Chair,
I'd so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Dale.
Okay. So it's been moved and second to move the Northside Pumping extension request to the full board. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. It'll be on the agenda in November for consideration by the full board. Next one.
The next extension is the King Hill Irrigation District. And I believe we have Ms. Tanya Boyd, their secretary and treasurer, on the line. They've run into a couple hangups and are requesting an extension. Union Pacific, specifically BLM work, is also they've had some work on their application that's taking a little bit longer. And then they're also waiting for the Glens Ferry Highway District and some easement work there. So They're looking for an extension, just a little bit more time to get things ironed out before they can also start work.
Okay. Miss Boyd, are you online?
I am.
Would you like to just tell us a little bit more about your need for the extension?
Sure. We have a second revised application with Union Pacific Railroad. We resubmitted the new application on the 17th. The first one, I was able to get a phone call in and find out that it was rejected because they do not allow to go through existing structures. So they will, unless we're a utility company. So we have to move it 150 feet away and resubmit a new application with new plans. The BLM, they want a environmental impact study. We already have one done, so it has been sent up the chain for approvals. The state of Idaho gifted some land or transferred into Glenns Ferry Highway District's possession about a 50-foot stretch of land that goes parallel with Highway 30 that we have to cross. And right at this point, it's not in Glenns Ferry Highway District's name. It's still in the state of Idaho. So they are trying to get things recorded with the Elmore County to get that in Glenns Ferry Highway District's name. And we already have the easement permission right-of-way approvals through Glenns Ferry Highway District.
Sounds like you're doing everything you can to move the project forward.
We're trying, and we're really hoping within the next 30 to 45 days that we get responses back from these folks.
Okay. Finance Committee members, are there any questions for Ms. Boyd? Other board members? Well, hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move we approve this extension. Or I'll second if Dale wants to make the motion.
That's fine. I'll do the second.
Okay, so moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, the final extension.
Last one. Last one is the Raft River Recharge Group. And Hattie's online and is here to answer any questions. But to kind of sum up their extension, they've done a ton of work since we've last caught up with them. They have a special election on the 7th to get their initial district directors, get everything set up that way. And then the plan was to start looking at contract work after that formation when they can start to sign probably sometime after the first of the year. So the extension would just give them a little more time to get the district finalized, get officers in place, and get authorities in order to start work.
Okay.
And I believe, let me double check, but I believe Hattie Zobot is on.
Hi.
Hello, Finance Committee. Do you have any questions for me?
Madam
Yes.
Chair.
Go ahead.
I don't want to step on your toes. If you got, I can wait.
I'm guessing my question is similar to yours, so you go ahead.
Okay, I have a couple of thoughts. Reading through the materials, it appears that the election to create the irrigation district, which as I understand will be the vehicle they use to execute this loan, isn't until next Tuesday. So we don't know whether or not they have an irrigation district in place or not. When is the 1 year up? Is it up in December? When is it up?
The 1 year, and let me look. So their resolution was approved at the board meeting in November of 22. The contract hasn't been signed yet, so the approval we've been working off of was the approval of the resolution back in November, and that would be up before the next meeting.
Before the next,
right around the same.
Yeah, because we
same
can't
time.
do anything about it till the 16th or 17th of November anyway, unless we hold a special meeting. But
Correct.
I'm wondering if rather than make a recommendation today, if we should take a pause and see if the voters actually do agree to create an irrigation district, and we know that we've got a firm entity that can secure the loan before we make a recommendation whether to extend it for a year or not.
Mr.
Any
Chairman,
other-
this is Dean. I would support that at this point.
Okay. Dale?
Well, yeah, I'm okay, but at our meeting in November 16th, will we deal with it then? So we'll know if they have a district formed by then.
Yeah. Joanne, this is Jeff. What I'm suggesting is that that the committee not make a recommendation because we don't have all the information today, but that this remain on the agenda for the November board meeting and the full board go ahead and take action, having all the facts in front of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. That sounds good.
And Mark, are you okay with that as well?
I think that's a good idea. Yes.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus amongst the finance committee. Other board members, do you have any concerns about holding off on a recommendation until we meet as a full board?
Madam Chair, Brian here. I don't have a concern. I was just curious. I can't remember what the interest rate was on this loan.
4.75% over 20 years.
Thank you.
I have no concerns, Madam Chair.
Okay, so Hattie, we look forward to seeing you in November in Boise when this gets brought up again, and with hopefully some good news.
Madam Chair, we expect the election to designate the irrigation district with 100% approval. So yes, we expect good news at that board meeting.
Excellent. All right, thank you for being here online today.
Thank you.
Joanne, just one quick thing, and maybe Hattie knows this, or probably one of our learned staff know this. After the election, don't have to take the results of the election to the district judge and have the district judge certify it or authorize the groundwater district or water district to move forward, or irrigation district. That's what it is.
Madam Chair, Board Member Raybould, we will have to certify the election results, and then the county will do that process, but we'll know the initial unofficial results by the time of the board meeting. And then I believe the district wouldn't be formed until about 60 days after the election. So we expect that to be in January.
Okay, I think if the election affirms the creation of the district, we're probably okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are we ready to move on?
Last thing, I do have a resolution to approve the extension for all four of them. I would ask how you'd like to proceed. If I can keep it the way that it reads in your materials, or if it would be better, I can break out Raft River separate and we could approve this one or recommend this one to the board with a separate one to be proposed at the meeting.
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. I don't think we need to recommend the resolution as such to the board. I think we've taken action on each of the four loans and we've made recommendations to extend 3 of them. I think we just leave this resolution as is until we get to the full board meeting in November. And if everything falls into place, then this resolution is probably appropriate.
Perfect.
Okay, I do concur with that as well.
Yeah, I'll work with Justin on the details of the resolution. Okay, moving on from the loan program, we're moving to the regional water sustainability projects. And we're going to move back to Neely, and he's going to walk us through some of the proposed terms and conditions that our staff has been working on with the project sponsors for a handful of these so far, and the plan would be then to put those proposed terms and conditions in front of the board at the November meeting.
Okay, Neely, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute there for a second. Thank you, Mr. Patton. Yes, I will discuss the regional water sustainability proposed terms and conditions. I just would remind you on a little bit of background. You know, you developed that list initially. Last year, you solicited requests to update that list. You did update that list. And then this summer, you chose to approve funding for 9 regional water sustainability projects statewide for a total of almost $60 million. The regional projects were funded with portions of ARPA monies, as well as state surplus funds allocated by the board to the board by Governor Little as part of his Leading Idaho initiative and the Idaho legislature. Those 9 projects that you funded are listed here. And as Mr. Patton indicated, we're going to talk about a few of them today. The others we'll bring back at a later date. The ones we plan to discuss today are the ones here in bold: the American Falls Spillway, the City of Nampa projects, the North Fremont project, the Treasure Valley Water Supply Study project, and the Lost Valley Reservoir enlargement. We'll talk about these not in that order, but we will talk about some of that. So when you approved that resolution in July of 2023 to authorize funds for these, you directed staff to work with sponsors to develop appropriate contract terms and conditions, which shall be brought back for board approval. So today, staff will discuss terms and conditions for several of the projects. Again, bolded. Terms and conditions for the remaining projects will be brought back at a future date. We'll begin with the Treasure Valley Water Supply Study, and then I'll cover the North Fremont project, and then I'll hand it off to one of our staff members, either Amy Cassell or Justin Ferguson or Cynthia Bridge Clark. So I'll start off here with the Treasure Valley Water Supply Study. This was put together, this application and project was put together by the Treasure Valley water users due to concerns in drain flows for many years in the Treasure Valley that have led to some water supply concerns in certain areas. So this project would establish a long-term robust measurement infrastructure capable of quantifying surface water flows in and tributary to the Boise River within Water District 63. This work would also update and refine the Boise River mass balance, complete drain flow trend analysis, and lead to the development of drain monitoring plans. And additionally, the data from this effort may help inform the existing Treasure Valley groundwater flow model, which does monitor some drains, but not all the drains. And this would bring in some of the additional drains that the model does not cover. So staff has put together some terms and conditions, and the staff is anticipating this would be a cost reimbursement contract. Most of these will be cost reimbursement. I think the American Falls will be a little different, and Cynthia will speak to that. But staff is proposing this as a cost reimbursement contract not to exceed, and then the sponsor shall pay the remainder of the costs. They shall submit documentation demonstrating that cost share has been secured. They can do that through like a grant award letter, loan, or bank statements, but some way to demonstrate that they have that secured. And again, if it's funding through a federal agency or some other agency, they could provide a grant award letter. Staff is proposing a 10% holdback on funds until project completion form is submitted, and they can only do that at the end of the project. Staff is also proposing that any products and data produced as a result of this project will be shared with the board upon request, including data that would help to inform the Treasure Valley groundwater flow model. And I would indicate that these are terms and conditions that the Treasure Valley water users don't have a problem with. They are agreeable to these. You can see here that they would request monthly progress reports and what it would include, and then that the contractor shall provide the final invoice summary of the project costs with a detailed list of the type of funds used to pay for the project. And this is just a way to make sure that they're not double counting those funds and that they actually do have funds from other agencies. So the total final cost of the project based on expenditures, list of all funding sources, and the amount used on any aspect of the project, and then if they've received any federal or state grants. So that's the extent of the cost reimbursement terms and conditions for that Treasure Valley water supply project. Say most of these are going to be pretty standard. I'd say what's specific to this one is the Treasure Valley groundwater model data being shared with the department and the board. So with that, I would stand for any discussion of the proposed terms and conditions for the Treasure Valley water supply study.
Are there any questions for Neely? I do have a question. The 10% holdback of funds, that's a 10% of the grant funds, not 10% of the total project cost, correct?
Correct. And I can clarify that. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, you're looking for a recommendation to send these a recommendation to the full board for these terms?
Madam Chair, yes. Some sort of recommendation for me to prepare that the full board can consider and approve. And I anticipate doing that in maybe a spreadsheet where we list what those terms and conditions are for each project, and perhaps have a resolution where you could approve all of them at one time. If it becomes more complicated, we could break them out individually, but I was thinking we could do them in a batch.
Okay, well, let's send the recommendation to the full board individually, like we did with the loan. So,
Madam Chair, before you go into this, I do want to make one comment about this term and condition. This fourth bullet down about sharing this information with the board, I think is really important for us because it could help us understand the groundwater flows. And it just doesn't make any sense for us to have this piecemeal information. The more comprehensive information we have about the system, the better.
so noted. That is good. It's a win-win.
Madam Chairman, this is Mark. I would make a motion to forward this project to the full board.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Dale.
It's been moved and second to forward the proposed terms and conditions to the full board for the Boise Treasure Valley water supply study. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Nope. Okay. Was that an opposed or was that an aye for moving it forward?
That was an aye. This was Dean. I was just late.
Okay. All right, good. Thanks for the clarification. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to the next one.
All right, Madam Chair. The next one is the North Fremont Canal Systems Phase 5 pipeline project. I think the board has actually toured this a few years ago when they were in eastern Idaho. That was the Marysville Canal that was over there by in eastern Idaho near St. Anthony. This is another phase of that project. They've been working on phases of this going back to 2004, converting open canals with old deteriorating check structures, head gates, and other infrastructure, and converting them to pressurized pipelines. And they are a gravity feed, so that has eliminated hundreds of electric pumps. So this phase 5 will replace 15 miles of the Marysville Canal with pressurized pipeline, including 31 aging check structures, 30 old irrigation pumps, and several headgate and turnout structures. As I mentioned, the board has, I think, provided loans for portions of this project, provided grants through an aging infrastructure in the past. I believe NRCS has funded several phases of this as well. Staff is proposing a cost reimbursement for this project. It's very similar to our aging infrastructure contracts, which are cost reimbursement. And it would be not to exceed a certain amount, and the sponsor shall pay the remainder of the costs. Now, some of those may be grants, in this case, through NRCS. Another standard condition here, sponsor shall submit documentation demonstrating cost share has been secured. Again, that could be a grant award letter. 10% holdback on grant funds until project completion form is submitted at the very end of the project. Then when requested by the board, the monthly progress reports, and then the final invoice summary breaking down all the funding that was used on the project. So we can understand, make sure there were no double accountings and make sure that it was done in line with as anticipated. So with that, this is very similar to our aging infrastructure project. It's just a little larger. So again, it's a cost reimbursement contract. And with that, these are pretty standard. I don't have any additional terms. And I would say that North Fremont is familiar with these conditions and does not have a problem with them. They're agreeable.
Okay.
So I stand for discussion and a recommendation.
Finance Committee members, any questions for Neely on this?
This is Jeff. If nobody has any questions, I move we recommend these terms and conditions for this project to the full board.
Is there a second?
I'll
Dale,
second.
is there a second? Okay.
This is Marc.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, let's move on to the next one.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. And at this point, the next project is being handled by Justin Ferguson, and he's been coordinating this work. So I will hand it off to him to discuss this. And then after that, Amy Cassell and then Cynthia.
Okay.
So the city of Nampa, we'd been working on some of their projects. They proposed 3 initially on the list to be funded: a wastewater treatment pipeline, system improvements to the Pioneer system, and the Copper River groundwater storage project. In working with their representative, it looks like they would opt to divert all of the funds to the Copper River storage project. However, the board had decided to fund all 3, and I can get right to a lot of the terms follow the same that Neely had talked about. The only unique ones would be, it's still a reimbursement contract, and they will still be required to demonstrate that a cost share has been secured. We'll still obligate them to the 10% holdback, and any data produced should be shared. The differences start where the monthly progresses apply to all 3 projects, because we would like to see all 3 projects funded rather than just one on the list. The same with the financial summary of all 3 projects. We would like to see some kind of breakdown at the end, how all 3 were funded and how the funds were used from the board to get the project done. And other than that, a lot of them will follow the same terms that Neely had talked about. We do have 2 representatives from the city, Mr. Tom Points and Ms. Lauren Lockley, are on the line in case the Finance Committee has questions. Otherwise, I'll stand for any questions.
Are the applicants familiar with these terms and conditions, and are they okay with them?
They are familiar, and we had talked about them. They are okay.
Okay. Finance Committee members, are there any questions? Okay, hearing none, I entertain a motion.
This is Jeff. I so move.
This is Dean, second.
Thank you. All in favor to forward these terms and conditions to the full board, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And that was an aye for pro, in favor of moving it forward, right, Dean?
Yeah. I just
Okay.
have a hard time getting my iPad unmuted here.
Okay, thank you. So motion carries. We'll move that one to the full board as well. All right.
All right, Madam Chair. Now we'll move to Lost Valley Reservoir Enlargement Project. and this will be discussed by Amy Castle. And Amy, sorry for mispronouncing your name earlier. It's Amy Castle.
No problem, Neely, no worries. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Yes, Lost Valley Reservoir Enlargement Project. Just a brief summary, this project proposes to replace and enlarge the existing Lost Valley Dam by constructing a new dam, spillway, and outlet infrastructure. This proposed enlargement will raise the water level of the reservoir by 30 feet and increase storage from 10,000 acre feet to 30,000 acre feet. The total cost estimate for the project is approximately $15 million. This project was awarded $560,000 in regional water sustainability funds back in July to complete pre-construction costs. Pre-construction costs include the work needed to complete an environmental impact statement, EIS, and federal consultation for the Northern Idaho ground squirrel, which is listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. Total pre-construction costs, including EIS, total $1,120,000. Project sponsors requested 50% or $560,000 from the board. The remaining $560,000 will be secured through the sale of Class D shares. Class D shares total 20,000 and each share is 1 acre foot in the expanded reservoir. So cost reimbursement contract proposed terms and conditions, it essentially mirrors the projects you've heard thus far this afternoon. It's a cost reimbursement not to exceed contract. The sponsor shall submit documentation demonstrating cost share has been secured. There's 10% holdback on grant funds until project completion form is submitted. Products and data produced will be shared upon request. We'll ask for a monthly progress report, and the final invoice of financial summary of the project's costs will also be provided. Today, one of the a representative for the project sponsor, I believe Doug Jones, is in the audience. Project sponsors do have several requests from the board. The first request is the board willing to enter into an overarching contract that allows for incremental payments over a period of agreed upon time? In other words, can the project sponsor enter into a contract and receive payment before they secure the full $560,000? And the second request is the board interested in purchasing Class D shares? I maybe got ahead of myself a little bit. Are there any questions before we have the representative speak on what I've shared thus far?
Are there any questions from the Finance Committee? Are there questions from other board members? So I do have a question, Amy. Is the last two questions that you asked, they would alter the terms and conditions that are spelled out in this write-up right now? Is that correct?
That is correct, and that is why there is a representative there today to speak to these requests directly.
Okay, Mr. Jones, would you like to talk to the two questions that you've asked of the board?
Is my mic on?
Just press the button so it's green.
There we go. All right. Madam Chairman, board members, thank you for the opportunity. Just maybe a little tiny bit of history to get to where we are with the questions. This project, the original water filing for this project goes clear back to the 1990s. There was some concern about the squirrels. There was some opposition at that point. It lay dormant for some time and we've begun to actively work on it just in fairly recent years. And I am here not as a board member for Lost Valley Reservoir Company, I'm part of Idaho Water Engineering, and we're the contract consultants for the project. And to be clear, and I think most of the board has heard me say this before, we are working on a contingency payment system. We've not received a penny and will not receive a penny out of this money that the board approved. We get paid with a certain percentage of the new storage water that we can then market. And that leads somewhat to the question about the board wanting water shares. I have discussed with this full board and with individual members over a long period of time whether the board might be interested in owning some of this storage space. Previous Chairman Chase was very interested. Things may have changed since he left the board and left the chairmanship, but it still is an open question. Idaho Water Engineering offered the board first right of refusal for the 4,000 acre feet of water that we will receive as our payment. Setting that aside, to go to the question of why do we want to spread these payments over a period of time? And it goes back again to some of the long history and some of the skepticism about whether the project would ever be built. And what we are doing, and when I say we are advising the board is making the decisions. We have informed first the current stockholders in Lost Valley, and second, other irrigation users downstream in the Weezer River system that space is available, and ask for them to sign up how much they would like of that new space. And we told them, and are following through, because this is at-risk money. If the project doesn't go ahead, this is money that they will forfeit to pay our match of whatever comes through this. So we split that into two payments. $35 was what we told them we would need as their share of the matching money. And so $17.50 per share per acre foot of new money was what we assessed or asked for at this time. We put an October 15th deadline on that to send your check in. And we have collected most of the money. There are 3 or 4 that we don't have the money. The checks aren't cashed yet. We think that they're still good for the money. But what has happened since that October 15th deadline, Middle Valley Ditch Company, which is the irrigation entity around Midvale, decided that maybe they were interested in some water. So they had a stockholders meeting, but they didn't do that till the 23rd of October. And at that meeting, they did vote to request 775 shares of new water. That election vote has been certified. They got a 92-point-something% approval rating, but we don't have their check in hand. Their check will be a little shy of $14,000. So currently with that and some other folks who decided they either wanted shares or wanted more shares than they originally asked for, we anticipate certainly within the next few days, we'll have $175,000 in the bank. The other thing we've done that's somewhat unique, I think, is we have EIS contractor in place, and we have an engineering firm in place. And the EIS contractor, we're doing this in one step at a time. We're taking it one bite at a time. So we will not receive a bill for the whole EIS from this company. We'll receive periodic bills as they complete individual steps of the process. The engineering company has already done their field work. They were up to Lost Valley early October when the weather was still good, so they could get in there and see what the situation was. We do not have their report in hand yet, but we think we will within a matter of a few days. And The Forest Service piece of this discussion, the Forest Service wants that engineering study so that they can submit it to complete their form that has to be submitted to them. They will then calculate how much money they want ahead of time to monitor the EIS process. So we still have some unknowns that should finalize here fairly shortly, but we don't need all of the money. We don't need all the 560,000 right now. And we have 175,000 in round numbers, probably a little more than that, available as our part of the match. So our request would be that we be able to take our 560,000 in increments as we move forward and as we accumulate more matching funds. That's probably the most critical piece of the discussion today, is to get that clarified, that we can do it in that form because of the way we've structured the contracts with the EIS contractor, with the engineering company, and waiting on the Forest Service. We have our newest district ranger for this project is a woman who seems very supportive. She comes from an Eastern Idaho farming family. She understands irrigation and water and reservoirs and is very supportive of the project. So we're encouraged about that piece from the Forest Service. So the question of whether the board wants water certainly is a question for the full board, but that's probably deferred today. The important piece is to resolve that we can draw this money in pieces as we need it and can match it. So, Madam Chairman, board members, committee members, I'll be more than happy to make a stab at answering questions. Most of you know me pretty well at this point, so have at it.
Finance committee members, are there questions? Dale, I
Madam
see your-
Chairman.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, this is Jeff. So my math shows just a little under 32% of the match is held in bankable funds if all the checks clear the bank. So that's less than the 50%, I think, Doug, that you indicated you had assessed. And I guess my question is, what happens if we decide to go down this project and Lost Valley puts up 175,000 and we put up 175,000, and that money goes to consultants or whoever it's gone, and then Lost Valley doesn't have any more money to put up? What happens? How do we complete this study and get an assessment of whether the project can move forward or not without them having the money? I guess I have a concern that if we're going to ante up 560 million or thousand, excuse me, 560,000, that the Lost Valley group doesn't have their 560,000 sitting in the bank, so that we know the project can be fully funded and move forward.
Madam Chairman, Chairman Raybould, I understand your question completely, but we structured it the way we did in two-stage payments, basically for the benefit of the potential stockholders and users. They're all farmers and ranchers. They have budget concerns of their own, and this is at-risk money. We won't spend anything that we can't match. And Lost Valley does have the ability to assess. They did increase their assessment a couple of years back at their annual meeting, and they do have some cash on hand of their own besides this money that is set aside specifically for this construction project. So I think it'd be a struggle, but we would repay the board whatever we had drawn down as match, because if we pull the plug at some point. In terms of the match, the other 1750 assessment, that will come at some point next year, again, as we move forward and see that the project becomes much viable. We think it will. We'll assess that. They've also been told repeatedly that the $35 may not be enough, that we're probably, or at least potentially, we may have to ask for a third contribution of at-risk money. So far, our numbers are coming in better than we forecast, like some of the other projects you've heard about today. Our costs are running a little below what we had estimated, and that's a good thing. And the EIS piece of it, which is really the first one that started until we get the engineering piece back, those costs also were running below where we had estimated and will be done in pieces. So we'll pay for it a step at a time as we go. We can't do anything with the squirrels right now through the winter till they come out of hibernation. So that won't happen until next spring. There's some other pieces of it that can be done as we go. The EIS contractor we have in place is already doing EIS work for the Forest Service and some other forests over in Washington. So we're pretty confident we can get through this and get it going. And as we have explained numerous other times, and I'm kind of jumping into some other things beyond your question, Chairman Raybould, there is another federal grant program. The application deadline is, I think, sometime in December. We will apply for. We may come back to the board with another aging infrastructure application at some point. And that will have, anything we can gain will reduce what we have to pay or what we have to charge the stockholders and borrow from the board out of the revolving loan fund to complete the project. But I think we're in a place where we have money in hand. We will get additional money in hand, and we won't spend anything beyond what the match is that we have received from the board. So if 175 round number, if we got that from the board now, that would be that plus our match would be all we would spend until we had additional cash in hand. That would limit what we might have to pay to the board back if we pull the plug on the project. So I think it's a reasonable way to do it, to spend the money in installments as needed, rather than take all the money and then say, gee, this isn't going to go and we're going to return the money back. It also lets the board have the flexibility to do something else with that money until we actually draw it. So long answer to maybe a short question, Chairman.
Madam Chairman, if I could just get this clarified in my mind, is Mr. Jones proposing that if we give them 175 to match their 175, they go and begin the study, and then they do not raise any more money, that Lost Valley Reservoir will agree to pay the 175,000 back to the water board?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not on the Lost Valley board, but I think the answer is yes, that would be the expectation. And they do have some cash in hand, and it's been very clear that this is the first installment of the money that these potential new shareholders will have to put up.
Doug, I'm really concerned. You and I each put 5 gallons of gas in the car and we drive down the road and then we're out of gas. And I've got another can of gas and you don't. Who's going to get to ride in the car for the next ton of money?
Mr. Chairman, probably a pretty good analogy. And I think we will have the 5 gallons of gas. I'm pretty sure of that. And I don't know, I don't think any of the board members signed up to come in on the Zoom. If there's any of them available, that'd be great. If the board wants one of the board members present when this is talked about at the full board meeting here in a couple of weeks, we can certainly make that happen.
I think
Joanne,
that'd be a
just to
good
follow
idea.
up, I think we need to ask Mr. Jones to go back and get clarification from the Lost Valley Board. Is what he has indicated to us is they have agreement with us that and I'm not saying we do or we don't. I think we need to have the full board involved in a discussion about dispersing any of these dollars until the full match is available. But if Lost Valley, if they spend the 175 and we spend 175 and they can't get further support from their subscribers, that they agree to pay back the board the 175, and that we just haven't bought a third of a squirrel study that does no one any good.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, wait a minute.
Madam Chairman, this is Mark.
Yes. Go ahead,
Uh,
Mark.
I share Jeff's concerns, and I think we should defer the decision on Lost Valley to the full board, pending more information from Mr. Jones on what the board of directors of Lost Valley Reservoir System may be willing to do if, in fact, they drop the ball and can't continue to fund this project.
Yes, okay, and I also agree. I would like to know, the memo that we received shows pre-construction costs include the work to complete an EIS, and then the section, the federal consultation. I think it's section 6, is that right, or is it a section 7? Anyway, two different products in my mind. Can we break those up and show us what portion of the 560,000 or the 1,120,000 is the EIS, and what portion is the federal consultation? If we need to make a smaller a progress funding, at least we'd get a product out of what we would get fund. Does that make sense?
Madam Chairman, yes, it makes sense. And I will go so far as to say that we will have at least one Lost Valley board member available for the full board meeting here in a couple of weeks to answer those questions as the board. I'm sure of the answer, but I'm just the consultant, and I understand the board's concern about being sure that of where we're going and where the state's going with their money. So we will have a board member either here in the room or certainly on the Zoom link for that meeting and for that discussion in a couple of weeks.
Okay, so just to clarify, the information that I feel I need as a board member to make a decision on this is the cost of the EIS, the cost of the consultation, and what will happen if we do progress payments for any one of those products and it can't get to the finish line.
All right. I don't know that we have a cost for the Federal Forest Service consultation until we submit their whatever their form number is, because then they will go back and figure out how much time they need to monitor what we're doing. So we have a reasonable estimate of that, but we may not have a hard number on that, Madam Chairman, at this, even in a couple of weeks. But we can certainly give you a reasonable estimate from the EIS contractor who's also doing other Forest Service projects in other states.
Okay, well, the 1.1 million has to represent something. I guess that's what I'm looking for. Is if it represents just the EIS, then I guess we're back to where we just need to know if you only have half the gas and can't get to the finish line, is the board willing to pay us back?
Madam Chairman, I think they're very willing to pay you back, but we should, by the time we come to the board meeting in a couple of weeks, we should have a cost from the engineering company for their updated study, which is part of what the Forest Service needs to figure out what they're going to do. And I can get you from the EIS contractor much more firm numbers on what he expects that cost will be.
Okay, so we have at least two things, engineering study and the EIS.
Yes.
We could potentially break out our funding based on those two products.
Yes, and we should have a reasonable estimate of what the Forest Service may think as well.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we'll punt this one to the full board and be prepared to discuss those two questions in November. Is there any other comments by the Finance Committee members? Any other board members?
Madam Chair, my only comment for Doug would be, I think it's really good that you're beating the bushes for shareholders in the Weiser River drainage, because I know we've talked some about, transferring water to the Upper Snake and that kind of stuff. And to me, that water, there's need for that water in the Weiser, and that's where you should be finding people to use that water. And it looks like you've made a start on that. And maybe if one ditch company joins in, maybe others will. It's, there's some risk to them, but there's also if you've got more water in the future, it's a big reward. So if anybody should take that risk, it should be Weiser River people to me. So, but anyway, I'm glad you got, somebody on board there and keep pursuing that.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Olmstead, yes, we've actually got commitments with Middle Valley and some other folks. We've committed about 2,000 shares in the last couple of weeks. Other than the 4,000 that we will hold as the consultants, there's only about 3,600 shares left that's not spoken for within the Weiser drainage. Weiser irrigation itself has still not come around to say, or individual. I emailed a particularly large landowner in the Weiser area who you would know a couple of days ago and reminded him that we needed an answer if he's interested. We may get all the water committed, or very nearly all of it committed within the Weiser Basin.
Excellent news. I hope that happens. Okay, so we look forward to hearing more from you and the full board in November, later this month.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Dale. Doug.
That's all I had, Madam Chair, and it's section 7, consultation 7. Sorry I didn't chime in sooner.
Thank you for that. Okay, are we ready to move on to American Falls Spillway?
Yes, Madam Chair. Next up will be Cynthia. She'll speak to the American Falls Dam Spillway Rehab. I think we also have maybe Megan Carter on the line that she could speak to some specifics to this agreement if there's questions. I mentioned previously that most of these others were going to be cost reimbursement contracts, and as you've noticed, a lot of the conditions are very similar. The American Falls Dam Spillway Rehab, I think, is going to be a little different with a unique agreement and a unique contract. And so I will hand that off to Cynthia now.
Right. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members. Come off my video here. Oh, need to turn on my mic. Well, good afternoon. Yeah, American Falls Dam, and I think Neely has the memo up there. And Neely, if you can just highlight the bullet points, those are probably going to be the most relevant for this discussion. So as we all know, American Falls Dam is owned and operated by the Bureau of Reclamation, and the project sponsors in this case include the American Falls Reservoir District. That incorporates American Falls Reservoir District number 2 and Twin Falls Canal Company. So collectively, they're referred to as AFRD, and Idaho Power Company. So the project sponsors represent both Space Holders and Idaho Power Falling Water, respectively, and they're each responsible for a percentage of the costs that we're talking about with these projects. I know you all have seen this and approved this project and seen the presentations on it, but just as a refresher, the project generally involves a series of repairs to the American Falls Dam, including a spillway repair, a trunnion pin replacement, guard gate frame inspection repair, and dam intakes replacement. And that piece includes the design, acquisitions, and construction components. So the spillway repair was completed between 2015 and 2023, and the other projects are scheduled to be completed between 2023 and 2032. So we've got kind of an ongoing effort here. The board approved the use of American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, monies to fund this, the project sponsors portion of these assortment of projects. And that is estimated to be around or upwards of $12.5 million. So ARPA funds may be used for the purposes of satisfying non-federal matching, the non-federal matching requirement for an authorized Bureau of Reclamation project. And so this project meets that condition. In addition, the federal ARPA guidance requires that the funds must be expended prior to December 31st, 2026. And so that will require that the board disperse all of the funding prior to the end of 2026. Now, we've been coordinating with the project sponsors. And so again, that's some of the space holders and Idaho Power, as well as with Reclamation. And we've come up with a proposed contract framework, if you will. And that's what I think we'd like to discuss today, are the details of that framework and to get any feedback and direction from you all. So as Neely mentioned, we have Megan Carter is joining us to help with any additional contracting questions or questions that you might have related to the ARPA requirements. And we also have Travis Thompson in the meeting to speak on behalf of the project sponsors if you have additional questions. So with that, I'm just going to walk through these bullet points. And again, these are just this just paints the picture of the framework that we would like to advance, unless you all have some concerns or additional input. So first of all, the plan would be to execute a contract between the board, Idaho Power Company, and AFRD to represent the space holders and falling water contractors or entity. The funding will be dispersed in installments, with the final installment being paid before December 31st, 2026, in accordance with the ARPA guidance. The first installment will cover, at a minimum, reimbursement for the amount already paid by the project sponsors for the completion of the spillway repair. So as I stated earlier, that piece is already complete, and that the sponsors' portion of that is roughly $3.5 million. The board will require invoices before it makes payments. So accompanying the first invoice, the board would need a breakdown of prior expenditures being reimbursed based on invoices from Reclamation and the project sponsors. And all of those subsequent invoices should be accompanied by a breakdown of anticipated project costs based on Reclamation's estimates. So again, that accounts for these other projects that are envisioned to occur over the next 10 years or so. The contract term would run the life of the project, so through 2032, though all of the funding would need to be dispersed by that December 2026 deadline. And then reporting requirements will continue through the life of the contract. Project sponsors will provide annual reports detailing project expenditures and work completed. And again, in our discussions with various parties, Reclamation was certainly amenable to that and is well equipped to provide that information. The board would also agree to pay up to that I'll call it $12.5 million, 12.4 and change, to be applied to the completion of the spillway repair and the other projects that I listed. So the trunnion repair, guard gate repair, dam intakes replacement. And finally, the project sponsors will comply with the board standard condition terms, contract terms. That's something that has been discussed to some extent today with the other projects, as well as any ARPA-related terms. And so again, we've been working with Megan Carter from the Attorney General's office on specifically to address the components of the contract and also to ensure that the ARPA funds are appropriate for this project. And so with that, I would like to just open the conversation up for questions and invite Travis and Megan to join us as needed.
Okay, Cynthia, I have a question right off the bat here. If there is there any concern that this project will not be completed prior to December 31st, 2026?
So I'll start, Ms. Chairman. I think the projects are not slated to be completed until 2032. And so this contract envisions that the project sponsors in coordination with Reclamation will invoice the board for the estimated costs of those projects prior to that 2026 deadline. And that in itself would accommodate the ARPA requirements. And I'll let Megan expand on that if I've misstated that.
Madam Chairman, Cynthia has not misstated that. The ARPA requirements are that the money has to have been allocated by 2024 and then spent by 2026. And so what this contract accomplishes is allocation and spending by those deadlines, even though the projects themselves won't be complete. Another thing that we're looking into is what requirements will be placed on the project sponsors for the money that is prepaid. One of those we believe is going to be placing the money in a non-interest bearing account and providing, along with those reporting requirements throughout the life of the contract, accounting of that account itself.
Will that count as being spent if it's put into an interest or a non-interest bearing account?
The board has spent it. That's kind of where we're at right now. We're still discussing, but that's kind of how we think this is going to work.
And hopefully 10% will remain in the account until the project is done. Can that be, if we're doing that in all the others, we're holding back 10%, even though the board wouldn't be holding it back, we would keep the 10%, require that 10% remain in the non-interest bearing account until the project is complete, or at least 10% of our funding. Is that a possibility?
Sure, this is Jeff. I guess I'm confused. It looks to me like to meet the ARPA requirements, we're going to have to authorize the transfer of ARPA funds to the Bureau of Reclamation for this amount of money, and Reclamation will then have the money. And I'm sure that we can do that in such a way that we can have an assurance from Reclamation that the work will be completed. But I don't think we can have a holdback and count that holdback as having the money spent under the deadline.
A point of clarification, we have had discussions with Reclamation, and because of the way that this project is structured and how they are billing the project sponsors, this money will not be held by Reclamation, but the project sponsors.
So whose tax identification number is going to be on the non-interest bearing account?
That I cannot speak to, but it won't.
I think I can, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
This is Travis Thompson. Just a point of clarification. The American Falls Reservoir District that we represent is the project sponsor, co-project sponsor with Idaho Power. And we envision that AFRD will participate as a kind of a holding company for the 34 other space holders in American Falls through a memorandum of agreements to ensure that their share of this funding is passed through and then invoiced from the Bureau in the future and paid for these projects as we move forward. So I think AFRD and Idaho Power, those two entities will be the contracting entities that will hold the funds until invoiced by the Bureau following 2026.
Okay, so we would be basically paying in advance in order to meet the ARPA requirements. And it would be going into a non-interest bearing account held by Idaho Power and AFRD. Is that correct?
Correct.
And they would disperse the money as invoices came in from the Bureau of Reclamation.
That's how I understand it. Yes.
And if the project doesn't get complete, what happens?
The money will need to be reimbursed to the board.
And that will be specified in the terms and conditions?
Yes.
Okay. And Travis, are the entities okay with that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, and just to clarify, so AFRD2 is a space holder in American Falls. Twin Falls Canal Company is not. There are 34 other canal companies, entities above American Falls and below that would all be part of this project, but the reservoir district would kind of be the flow through for that. So that would be the agreement that any money that they would be holding in that account, that if the Bureau didn't complete a certain project, would be reimbursed back to the board. So you're not going to have to collect it from 35 entities. You're dealing with just two, Idaho Power and the Reservoir District.
Okay. Finance Committee members, are there any questions for any of the presenters?
Madam Chairman, Brian here. One of the bullet points up on page 6, it kind of indicates, it's confusing to me, it indicates that, or maybe it wasn't in the bullet point, but somewhere that Twin Falls Canal was the one sponsor and Idaho Power Company was the other one. And in reality, it's American Falls Reservoir District, which, as Travis said, is 30-some canal companies. So I just don't like that. I don't want it to look like Twin Falls Canal Company will be holding a bunch of the money.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Olmstead.
And Madam Chair, the same goes for American Falls Reservoir District 2. It would just be the Reservoir District number 1, which is the sponsoring entity for all space holders, in addition to Idaho Power and their falling water portion.
Okay, and I'm sure that when we draft the contract terms and conditions, we'll have the correct entities specified. Is that a fair statement, Megan?
That is a fair statement, yes.
Yeah, and I'll follow up on that, Madam Chair. We, at this point, we were just interested in your feedback. I think the group anticipates that this contract could be ready by January, so it will not come before the board in November. But yes, so there's plenty of work yet to be done, but this feedback is helpful in the interim.
But certainly would be good to spend the ARPA money in time. Are there any other questions? So are we looking for a recommendation to go forward with this, or do we want to discuss this in more detail with the full board?
Madam Chairman, I think from my, oops, sorry, I keep identifying the mic here. From our standpoint, I think your feedback is sufficient. So I don't know that we need a formal decision from the committee today, but this, I think, gives us the guidance that we need to move this forward.
Excellent. Okay, I think thank you to all who worked on this. This is a complex project and look forward to seeing it to fruition. So we are then now to the next agenda item, which is the ARPA supplemental budget request.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm going to turn this one over to Sasha, who has joined us here in the meeting room in Boise, and let her talk about this one. I think most of you or all of you have been briefed on the problem, but I will let Sasha just walk through the supplemental budget request.
Good afternoon. So everybody's aware of what happened with our budget at the end of the year, fiscal year 23. There was a reversion that was done with the ARPA money of $25.5 million that went back to essentially DFM because I did not include in our FY23 budget request reappropriation authority. There was some confusion in what was done when the board was authorized the $250 million, and it was, nobody was aware that we really needed to do reappropriation authority. So in the meantime, what's happened is 25 million of the 100 million that was appropriated to the board last year was reverted back. So we have requested in our FY25 budget a supplemental for FY24 of $25.5 million to be put back into the board's coffers to be able to spend for these projects. And also we have included an additional language in our budget request for FY25 for reappropriation authority for any unspent funds from the ARPA appropriation to stay with the board for every year that we have the ARPA money available for us. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you for the clarification and taking care of future years as well.
Hopefully there's not a lot of questions for it with it. Fact of me never having done a reappropriation before and having a new analyst with DFM, she wasn't aware either. And our legislative services analyst thought that the intent that was with the board's appropriation for the 250 was enough to grant that full 250 million over the course of the time. There was just some confusion, and I think we've got it all ironed out now.
Okay. Were there other agencies stuck in the same boat?
There were, yeah, there was some agencies that hadn't received reappropriation authority. So they're going through the same thing as we are.
So ours will not be unique.
No.
All right. Thank you, Sasha, for that. Any questions?
Yeah, this is Mark. I have a question. Does that going to have to meet JFAC muster to be reappropriated?
Mr. Chairman and Member Gibbs, yes, it does have to go through JFAC.
How are relations with the Appropriations Committee?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, Mark, you're no stranger to this. I think we're fine. I think we'll be able to explain the reason for the supplemental and hopefully can get the language changed so we don't have a problem in the future. But it's always a peril having to go through the legislative process.
Been there and done that.
All right. Okay.
But I'm counting on one solid vote from Madison County.
Well, I think we can get one. How many do you have to have? 13 or 14 to get something out of JFAC?
Well, yeah, you've got to have 14, I think, 15,
yeah.
16.
Yeah, I think that we can get a vote out of Madison County, and I believe a good senator from Jefferson County will give us a vote as well. So we only need 12 more.
I think we got a few water folks there still.
Yeah.
And maybe Elmore County? Is there anyone from Elmore County on?
Yes, Representative Bundy. I think he will support us.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, I think I heard former Representative Gibbs volunteer.
To be on JFAC or to lobby?
Whichever it takes.
Right. All right, we're counting on you, board member Gibbs.
We'll try.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're now to the next item on the agenda, other items. Do we have any other items that we need to bring up?
Madam Chair, I'm not on your committee, but one, I harp on this little every time for our grant programs, future rounds of grant programs. I still think we need one bullet point in there that the applicants take into consideration impacts to, for instance, canal linings, pipelines that impacts to other users are considered in it, whether it be groundwater users or surface water users. We don't want to be picking with state money. We don't want to be picking winners and losers, and that's a bit of a risk, I think, to us. So something for staff, I think, maybe to work on looking down the road. That's all I had.
Thanks for that. So Brian Patton, is there any other information that we need to consider in the Finance Committee?
Just one other item. Just want to let everybody know that the governor is doing a groundbreaking ceremony at the Enterprise Canal Project tomorrow in Ryrie. Marc Gibbs and Brian Olmstead will be representing the board at that event. Jeff was already conflicted, but will be well represented.
And we are bringing Kleenexes.
And then, of course, your next meeting is scheduled for, November 16, 17, later this month.
And the cloud seeding on the 15th.
Yes, thank you. There is that cloud seeding workshop on the 15th being put on by the North American Weather Modification Council. It's not a board meeting per se, but you all are invited if you choose.
Brian, this is Jeff, or excuse me, Joanne. Also, we'll be presenting to the Interim Resource Committee meeting on Monday the 6th.
And presenting
for the water board update, and then Brian's got some other information he's going to present on the Treasure Valley groundwater model.
Okay.
Right, I'm actually punting that to staff, but yes, there will be several other presentations on some other topics. Shelley Keene's going to discuss adjudication status. Matt Andrews actually is going to talk about the Treasure Valley groundwater model with the legislature on Monday. And Jeff, if you need anything, please let me know.
Yeah, I've dug up my notes from last year, so I can basically tell the same story again this year. I'll get with you on that.
Okay.
All right. Any Finance Committee members, anything else you'd like to bring up before we adjourn? Board members? All right. Thank you. It's been a long but very productive Finance Committee meeting, and look forward to seeing everyone in Boise on the 16th.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thanks, Dale. It's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.